Peggy Noonan has written a column over the weekend, and man, has it made a lot of people mad. Burn the Republican Party down, it would damage the country, and those who say yes bear some blame for the president's rise. That's the part that's making them mad. You know, so there's this, the Lincoln Project group, or Project Lincoln, whatever, not Lincoln Financial. Okay. I have friends who are involved with the Lincoln Project. And they and I, we don't see eye to eye on this. I can't fault them for not liking the president. But if we're real honest about it, they're not actually. This is a group of Republican political consultants who want to take credit for the work that other people are doing. They're really not buying a lot of ads. They're just trying to generate social media buzz because they want to get under the president's skin. And yet if he loses, and it looks likely, frankly, in the polling, except we'll get to the except here in a little bit, if he loses, they'll take credit for it when they really haven't done much to it. But one of the things they want to do is they want to go after Republicans in the Senate. Essentially, they want to completely hand the reins of government to the Democrats, the Senate included. They want to punish Republicans who they blame for not standing up for the president. So Peggy Noonan is writing about this. I want to read you some of her column. Where did Donald Trump come from? Where's the GOP going? Should the whole thing be burned down? A lot had to go wrong before we got a President Trump. This fact, once broadly acknowledged, has gotten lost, as if a lot of people want it forgotten. Mr. Trump's election came from 2-on-1 wars, which constituted a historic foreign policy catastrophe, a great recession, which those in power, distracted by their mighty missions, didn't see coming until it arrived with all the wreckage. He came from the decades-long refusal of both parties' leadership to respect and respond to Americans' anxieties from left and right about illegal immigration. He came from bad policy and bad stands on crucial issues. He came from the growing realization of on-the-ground Americans that neither party seemed to feel any particular affiliation with or loyalty to them, that both considered them lumpen bases to be managed and manipulated. He came from the great and increasing social and cultural distance between the movers and talkers of the national GOP, its strategists, operatives, thinkers, pundits, and party professionals, and the party's base. He came from algorithms that deliberately excite, divide, and addict, and from lawmakers who came to see that all they had to do to endure was talk, not legislate, because legislating involves compromise. And in an era of grown, polar, and primitive compromise is for quislings. He came from a spirit of frustration among a sizable segment of the electorate that in time became something like a spirit of nihilism. It will be a long time repairing that, and no one is sure how to. And here in that perfect storm was Mr. Trump's single momentary genius. He declared for president as a branding exercise and went out and said applause lines. And when the crowd cheered, he decided, this is my program. And when it didn't cheer, he thought, that's not my program. Some of it was from his gut, but most of it was that casual. After the election, a former high official told me he observed it all from the side of the stage. This week, the official said that after a rally on the plane home, all Mr. Trump and Jared Kushner would talk about was the reaction. Did you see how they responded to that? The base, with its cheers, said they weren't for cutting entitlement benefits. They were still suffering from the effects of 2008. They weren't for open borders or for more foreign fighting. They were for the guy who said he hated the elite as much as they did. The past 4 years have produced a different kind of disaster, one often described in this space. The past 6 months, Mr. Trump came up against his own perfect storm, one he could neither exploit nor talk his way past, a pandemic and economic contraction that will likely produce a lengthy recession and a prolonged, sometimes violent national street protest. If the polls can be trusted, he's on the verge of losing the presidency. Now, various of his foes, in or formerly of his party, want to burn the whole thing down, level the party, salt the earth where it stood, remove Republican senators, and replace them with Democrats. This strikes me as another form of nihilism. Nihilism, potato, tomato, tomato. It's bloody-minded and not fully responsible for 3 reasons. Now, let me surmise her 3 reasons. First, it's true that the two-party system is a mess and a great daily frustration, but in the end, together and in spite of themselves, both parties still function as a force for unity. Second, if the Republicans lose the presidency of the House and the Senate in November, the rising progressive Democratic Party will be emboldened and present a bill for collection. And third, Donald Trump is burning himself down. Have you not noticed? There is a great debate. Peggy Noonan is the latest to weigh in on this, on whether or not you need to destroy Republican senators and hand the Democrats the Senate. Here's the thing. If the Democrats, I believe, if they get to 55, 56 senators, they're going to end the filibuster. And then you will see a great wave of progressive spread. And then in 2 years, you won't actually see the end of Donald Trump. You will see the second coming of Trumpism, more emboldened than the first, with people more articulate than the president himself as the banner carriers for it. In essence, what the Lincoln Project people want to do is end Trumpism. And by handing full control of government to the Democrats, they are going to expand it. They're essentially going to be miracle grow to Trumpism. You know, here's the dirty little secret that a lot of people don't seem to realize, recognize, understand, or appreciate. A lot of the Republicans in the U.S. Senate and House who have become the most Trump-like privately acknowledge the man has major flaws and faults, and only do so publicly, the song and dance, because they know that's how you got to get things done with Trump. There's something we should all be a little bit upset about, the number of people who have to get on a stage and sing and dance karaoke show tunes to please the president to get anything done. That's not the way our democracy, our republic should function, and yet it is these days. Everyone's got to go out of their way to praise the president, if nothing else, to keep him on the sidelines, to keep him out of the way. That's not a good or stable way for government to happen. It's very much like in the purchase of TikTok, Microsoft is going out of its way to praise the president for helping them initiate conversations, when in fact Microsoft initiated conversations well before the president said anything. But you got to do it these days. And I realize that is off-putting to some people. It's off-putting to some people to acknowledge. It's off-putting to some people to realize it's happening. But let's deal with a lot of the people behind the scenes with the Lincoln Project. Steve Schmidt, for example, was a failed Republican strategist who ran people for president unsuccessfully, is now a talking head on MSNBC and tried to get a job with the Trump team and wasn't successful. Many of the people who are involved behind the scenes are just as much political hacks as they claim that the president's people are, mercenaries, if you will, who will go to the highest bidder. And they didn't have an edge with Donald Trump. And that's part of the problem here, is they've got to not just defeat the president and all of those members of the Republican Party in the Senate and start over so they can build a party in their own image, because they're not really Democrats, but they have no future in the Republican Party. So the only way for them to have a future in the Republican Party is for them to destroy the entire thing and rebuild it in their own image. But the problem with rebuilding it in their own image is that they came from a Republican Party that the Republican base rejected. I mean, the people who ran John McCain and Mitt Romney's campaigns really have no leg to stand on. Many of the Republicans who went with Donald Trump in 2016 did so out of sheer frustration in 2008 and 2012, because you had Republican presidential candidates who they felt like weren't capable of fighting the Democrats. John McCain, you will recall, at the end of the campaign, decided to suspend his campaign during the recession and privately told some he was totally comfortable with Barack Obama having that historic moment, and he wasn't sure he wanted to stand in the way of history. And those campaign people are the ones who now want to tear down Donald Trump, the ones who wouldn't fight Barack Obama. Listen, y'all know my views on Donald Trump. I didn't vote for the man in 2016. And I get up these days, and as many days as I get up thinking, man, I got to vote for him to stop the left, I get up thinking, why do I even bother? But helping the Democrats? You know what the real dividing line here is, if we're really honest, with the exception of very few of them. Most of them couldn't care less if you murder your child. And that's ultimately it. They're in it for money, and they're in it for access and influence. They don't like Donald Trump because they don't have access to him, they don't have influence with him, and they don't have money because of him. And so they found a way to make money and to burn it all down, and they couldn't care less whether you kill a child or not. That seems to be the biggest dividing line these days between the still never Trump and those like me who were and decided, you know what, maybe I won't vote, but if I do, I'm voting for Donald Trump because I got to stop the Democrats, because they don't care whether or not children die. It's just not a big issue for them. There are people who I know who will not vote for Donald Trump. They do not like his character. They think character still counts, and they're not going to vote for him. And there are days I wake up, and I think I'm going to be one of them. Y'all, I wish he would just get off Twitter and like stay in the background and let other people do stuff. There are people who will excuse everything Donald Trump does because he hates all the people that they hate. and they're willing to give him a pass on everything. Some of them are convinced that this really is a government, because the COVID-19 really is a deep state conspiracy to destroy the presidency. I don't understand the people who think that. I relate more to the people who don't like him and don't want to vote for him, but want to preserve the GOP. I don't relate to the people who want to destroy him and the GOP, who claim to be Republican but want to destroy the Republican Party. But what these people need to understand is many of them were the consultants who put forward candidates who gave lip service to the base and didn't really mean what they were saying. And the base was smart enough. They don't think the people are smart, but the base was smart enough to recognize they were being had by these people. The heirs of John McCain really have no place in the future of the Republican Party. And it is the heirs of John McCain who now want to burn the whole thing down. John McCain was rejected in 2000. In 2008, he became the nominee. That's what the Republican Party tends to do. They go with the heir apparent. In 2000, it was McCain versus Bush. It went to Bush. So in 2008, it was McCain versus Romney. It went to McCain. In 2012, it went to Romney. In 2016, the base had enough. They decided to fundamentally upend the nominating structure of the Republican Party, which has always gone to an heir apparent. I mean, go all the way back. In 1976, you had Ford versus Reagan in the primary. It went to Ford. In 1980, it went to Reagan with George H.W. Bush as the outsider who became VP in 1988. It was Dole versus Bush, and it went to Bush for Reagan. And in 1996, it finally went to Dole. In 2000, it went to George W. Bush versus McCain. In 2008, it went to McCain because Cheney didn't run. In 2012, it went to Romney, who challenged McCain in 2008. In 2016, it didn't go to any of them. The party had enough. And the Democrats will get there eventually. But the idea that you should burn down a Cory Gardner or a Susan Collins, who publicly does the stuff that everyone is supposed to do these days and say nice things about the president, while behind the scenes actually holding him accountable, it's absurd. Essentially, these are the same people. They become Trumpified. You see, a lot of Trump's voters had enough of these guys with the Project Lincoln Project, whatever, who publicly would tell them what they wanted to hear and privately laugh at the Hicks and Rubes and the pro-lifers. And they finally got a guy who said in public what he believed in private. Well, now these Project Lincoln guys want the same thing. They want someone who will say in public what they believe in private. If you think the president's bad, say it in public. But, here's the thing. They've always had a more nuanced view of politics, and now they've thrown their own nuance out. Donald Trump's greatest superpower is to make other people behave in the same way they claim he behaves, and this is exactly happening again. You're not going to burn down the Republican Party to save the Republican Party. What you're going to do is burn down the Republican Party to salvage your careers. And in other words, you're as self-interested as you believe Donald Trump's family is. You just don't want to acknowledge that you're largely a mirror image now of what you detest. At least be honest about it.
Eric Erickson wades through the